Good evening. Just got done our Regional Service Commission meeting. I have a half hour in between my meetings, so decided to give you a monthly update on what is happening for St. Andrews Town Council. There was two Town Council meetings. One was February 7th and the other was February 22nd. A bulk of the conversation and the motions were February 7th, so I'll spend majority of this video updating you on what Council talked about and what was decided during that meeting in particular. When I jump into it, the first thing I want to note is that Town of St. Andrews, you'll notice if you watch, actually does land recognition. We give a land recognition statement to the Pescatoo Mogati. We think that that's important that as a municipality that we do recognize that they're on unceded territory. And I think it's an important first step in realizing that there's more we can do towards reconciliation. We had a presentation from Carol Gamblin. She is a community coordinator for the Canadian Red Cross. She did a presentation on the Connection NB project, and that basically is a project that takes volunteers and it partners them with seniors in our community, and it helps bridge the gap and show them some of the resources that are available in the community. It lets them know about certain things that are available, and as well, it's a way in which sometimes seniors that live on our own can be partnered with a volunteer just as a check-in. So it's a very healthy program, good to see. And we wish them nothing but the best. They only did it in a couple select municipalities, and we're glad to be part of their pilot project. As always, we approve minutes, and once a month we will continue to do our staff report, which was accepted by council. But a bulk of what we talk about and what we do in these videos is the actual passing consideration of bylaws, which I will kick off with finance and administration. There's no question that inflation is at a high right now. If you look at some of the reports that you get, it would indicate that inflation, depending how you measure it, has gone up over 5%. Typically, the town of St. Andrews, their basic policy on, I guess you could say inflation is usually puts it around 2% per year that we give wage increases. We discussed it a little bit. We ended up settling at 3%. And of course, at budget time next year, we'll do a more formal check-in. We only budgeted 2%, so we wanted to make sure that we weren't running a deficit for the town. There was a little bit of flexibility with some staff vacancies, so we did take it to 3%. It's important to note that normally council wages go up proportionately to municipal staff wages, but I just wanted to recognize council as they thought that everybody that has a job doesn't get to vote in their own, get to decide what their wage increase is. So we didn't want to decide ours either. So this council decided to have a 0% increase on their wages. It's tough times. And when we get into talking about adjusting the rates of council pay, a number of councils, including myself, think that that's something that should be done at the end of your term, where you adjust the wages for the next council. Simply for the fact that, again, that everybody else that works a job doesn't get to decide what their own pay increase is. So kudos to council for putting a wage freeze on themselves. Public Works, we did do the declaration for climate emergency. It's not just a feel-good statement. Obviously, we know that St. Andrews is impacted by climate change just as much, if not more than anyone, when you look into things like rising sea levels. But we didn't want this just to be a feel-good statement. There is 6 action items that are attached to that, 6 statements of things that we want to accomplish. So we want to make sure that we're doing our part. And you can see that this council has had a very significant environmental focus, which is great to see for the community. Moving along was we got into policing priorities under public safety. We have to submit we have to submit a list to the RCMP every year of our policing priorities. The 3 that were identified was community visibility and staffing around the police response times. We really wanted to make sure that the RCMP is aware that we would like to see an increase in their presence on the streets. We understand that for the most part, I wouldn't say that St. Andrews has a crime problem, but with that being said, it's important to know that if something ever does happen, an emergency, that we do have RCMP in the area that are able to respond in a timely manner to our emergencies. The next one was traffic enforcement. In particular, we've got a lot of complaints over the last year around speeding, so we wanted that addressed. And the last one is a pretty consistent one, I bet you, across not just New Brunswick, Canada, maybe even the world, is obviously drug education, enforcement, and reduction of substance abuse. So those were the 3 priorities that we submitted. The next motion was in regards to NB Power. They were looking for a letter of support for the town of St. Andrews. They're trying to renew its nuclear power reactor, its operating license. They were looking for kind of I guess you could say a 25-year renewal, which is something that I don't think we've seen before. Council debated this, and although they have an impeccable safety record, no one's questioning that they're not a valuable employer in our areas. As we know, a lot of residents actually work there as well. but to lock it in to give a blanket support of a 25-year renewal, we didn't think that was responsible. And the other thing too is we want other councils in the future to have an opportunity, hopefully, to weigh in and make sure that that safety record continues and all the concerns and everything, that there's regular engagement and dialogue throughout the course of the future. And as well, I know there's the debate of, should we be looking to get to other sources of, you could say, electricity, of power? I know that, any of those regulations would be made on more of a provincial level, but council was only comfortable at this time of putting a letter of support for 5 years. So that is what we have sent in. The next one is we renewed the St. Andrews Farmers Market. We redid their agreement, so they'll be locked and loaded for this year. We also agreed on the Canadian Cultural Spaces Fund. Basically, 50% of that could go up to cultural space, and we're focusing ours on the courthouse and jail. In particular, the 4 items that we're looking at is painting the exterior of the courthouse and the coat of arms, the installation of a parking area with accessible parking, replacement of a roof and soffit, additional vents for the jail, and replacement of all existing windows of the jail. So we're trying to get a grant to get that work done. It's 50% dollars, so it would be good to get those funds to continue to maintain that property as it's important to our community. The next one was our grant request looking for the town to match funds on the cemetery pillars at the Anglican Church parish. So we had a conversation about that, decided to basically table the motion. These funds originally were sought from the Tourism Accommodation Levy Board. And I know that people could debate that people do come to town to visit loved ones in the cemetery, but it also could be debated that tourism funds necessarily shouldn't go to maintaining a cemetery. So what we did is we tabled it, and we're looking at policies around the Tourism Accommodation Levy, the percentage the town keeps, to make sure that we've got a consistent policy when it comes to checking these projects. So more to come on that. The next one was a recreation cost sharing agreement with the LSDs. So our neighboring LSDs in the town of St. Andrews have pooled together funds, and really it's for 2 main initiatives: to support the W.C. O'Neill Arena, and as well the other initiative is we're looking to actually hire a rec director. That job is posted, and we've got some external funding to help pay for that job. So that's an exciting new position within the town that's made possible. And it was good to be honest, to see both the LSDs and the town sit together at a table and figure out a system in which we can do a little bit of cost sharing in a fair manner. I know that probably is a short-term agreement, simply for the fact that we know that municipal reform is happening. But it was good to sit down with people from the LSDs and really on our own come up with the start of our own way of working together. So again, with municipal reform happening, I don't expect that agreement to be necessarily long-term. The next one was a Belmax development. So we went to second reading on a development. The access point was through a right-of-way that came out by Tim Hortons off Mowat Drive. Council did defeat that motion. It was requested that by the developer himself, after hearing from the Planning Advisory Committee, hearing of objections and their decisions, that they would like to actually withdraw their development. So that was actually defeated, so that was taken off the table. There was a discussion on refunding their permit fees associated with the rezoning, but the reality is the town of St. Andrews incurred some more than that cost when it came to actually doing this project, so that amount wasn't refunded. And then basically there was some motions pertaining to, I guess you could say, zoning with Kingsbury Arms as they look to get a new, to basically get a liquor license, which they have had alcohol there in the past. It's just since the property did sell, it's actually got to be rezoned to make sure that it's compliant. When I get into that, we got into the last thing was a big conversation. It was around housing development. So St. Andrews has earmarked funds. As when we all ran for council, everybody said housing was a priority. So we identified it as our number one priority. We put some funds aside in our budget for this year to help spur development. We had 3 motions before us to look for support on development. First one was to help with services going into the Van Horn Garden Homes, which is on the corner of Mowat Drive and Bar Road. Council will be putting funds into put the services into that development to assist the developer, and that is going to be for $89,148. It's important to note that pays for itself back in about I believe almost under 4 years, about 3.5 years. The next one was Victoria Terrace. They were looking for $122,670. to put in services to do a development there. Together, both those options will put 35 new units in St. Andrews. The Van Horn Garden Homes looks like it'll be mainly for rental, Victoria Terrace mainly to purchase. And if you look at what those tax dollars would bring in for this new development, both of these investments pay for themselves. The other one was in regards to Champlain Village, which would be off Champlain Drive. Unfortunately, council at this time is not ready to allocate any funds. The amount of level of investment that it required currently was, I guess you could say, a little higher than the town was willing to give, and as well as the town was actually, in that case, using town land to spur the development as well. So funds plus town land, it got a little bit too high for council. However, we are continuing to have discussions with the developer to make sure that that there isn't an opportunity there, and there isn't an affordable opportunity. And that was pretty much it for that first meeting. The second one, I'll quickly go through, is a little quicker, February 22nd. So when you get into the actual motions of that one, we went to second and third reading for basically just rectifying a surveying challenge on the Bar Road. This one brought a little bit of concern because the actual motion makes it sound like we're permanently blocking and stopping the Bar Road. That isn't the case. It's just a matter of stopping where the old survey goes. So there's no real change to the Bar Road. It was just cleaning up some old surveying and some properties for neighboring property owners. And then the majority of what we talked about with this particular meeting was around a work session we also passed a tourism accommodation levy policy on how we were going to allocate funds. But the majority of what we talked about was actually a workshop on the zoning bylaw. There's a lot more to come on that, but basically the summary is St. Andrews is trying to figure out a way in which we can provide more density, provide more housing options for the community without taking away from how special of a place this is to work. We've got heritage designations, we've got beautiful streetscapes, we've got great views of the ocean. We want to find a way in which we can, make this a more development-friendly community without taking away from what we are. So there was conversations about basically multiple residential zoning, how much frontage is required, how much a buffer space would be between that and a residential area, as far as how much space should be on the side lawn, for example. And then even conversations over, if you look at an apartment building in St. Andrews, for example, the requirement is 1.25 parking spots. Should it be one? So we had a lot of great conversations about that. More will come on that. Basically, it was a work session. I expect a new version to be made possible after that, and council will look at first reading. So if council does go to first reading on that, I'll clearly highlight what those changes are. Again, we had another closed session item regarding land, but that is a very quick summary of 2 meetings for the month. I usually keep these shorter, but you can see that there continues to be a lot going on in the community. So for those of you that lasted to the end of my video, I just wanted to thank you very much for watching, and we'll do this all again next month.